JCPenney's going through a Phoenix recoil spring transition right now. What do you want the viewers at home to attribute JCPenney with? And is there something synonymous with the mission or value statement?
I would say...
Well, this is a very special episode today. I'm in Texas. And as the saying goes, when in Rome. So obviously I'm dressed the part. Very hot here. And Sharmeelee, she just moved here a year ago, so she's still getting acclimated to the weather, as am I. But all right, well, let's get right into things. So, how has JCPenney's approach to technology shifted since you joined the company?
Great question. Started in beginning of 22. The focus has been how do we build for the future? Instead of focusing on how do I fix what I have, let me focus on how do I build for the future. So that's what I call what I have been driving, Tech 2.0, where we are trying to, obviously we don't have the privilege of stop everything and go build for the future, but how do we maintain what we have in a way that we can continue to run, at the same time build for the future so that you can actually prepare yourself for the future while you are maintaining your status quo. So it's a balance between foundational, at the same time more strategic thought process and building for the future.
That makes sense. So that being said, what have been some of the biggest hurdles you've had to coach your team through as you started undergoing your transformation, and how have you overcome those hurdles?
Nothing new. Like anybody who's been going through a transformation, it's the same, right? So any tech transformation involves not just technology. It's the people, the process, and technology, right? So it's like a three-legged stool. That's how we look at it. So the cultural mindset shift, apart from how do we ensure that we bring in the right process simplification. So it's not just technology, the business, technology, and everything that comes together for us to make the transformation work has been a journey, and it continues to be a journey because, like I said, we are not just revamping everything, right? We have to maintain some status quo, at the same time build something strategic enough for the future. It's a balance between those two, and I think that's where I won't say we've been struggling. That's where we've been trying to figure out what is the most efficient way for us to do it, because it's not written anywhere that you can just follow a set of standards and say go do it. We are learning as we go through, and the teams have been phenomenal in making sure that they are actually continuing to evolve as we learn and then make it as efficient as possible.
What kinds of digital improvements has JCPenney made since you joined as CIO, since the reinvestment was announced last year?
It's a long list. I don't think I have enough time to talk through it, but let me focus on some of the very important and strategic focus areas that we've had. JCPenney has been focused on customers, right? Making sure that we are always focusing on how do I have the value proposition to our customer experience, customer value, and that has been our number one focus even in digital transformation. So made changes to the website, making changes to the foundation of our website, right? Like our e-commerce website, to ensure that we are more, I don't want to use technology here, but I would say microservices, which is what we are focused on. How do we build something so that we can keep adding on to it instead of having to revamp every time something new comes up in place? Customer experience, making sure that we are there for the customer at the right time, at the right place, at the right price, at whatever venture they are in, right? Whether it's online, whether it's stores, but we are trying to figure out a way for us to do it in such a way that it's always focused on customer. Whether it is their experience online when they buy something, so that giving them the recommendations, providing them the easy access navigation so that they understand what we have, or when they are in the stores, can they do curbside pickup, or they do buy online pickup in store? Anything to do with making their shopping experience easier has been the focus.
So in terms of, what do you think your top 3 initiatives are for the year?
Top one will always be customer focused, right? We are wanting to ensure anything to do with customers, whether it is experience, like I mentioned, what we call customer-driven operating model. So anything around a customer, whether it is customer identity, customer management, or customer experience has been the focus, and that's something that both in the business side and in technology that we are focused on, number one. Number two, I would say, is strategic inventory, which is also very closely aligned with our customer, because I want us to be able to provide the efficient shipping routes for our customers so that they can get the products much earlier than what they are used to. So making sure that we have technology in place for it to use, like big words, AI, ML, for it to be able to use actually modeling to say which is the node that we need to be sending the inventory from. Where is it available? What is the fastest way to reach them? And focusing on some of those inventory, strategic inventory management process is something that we are focused on. And then you asked for three. The third one, I would say it is also focused on store technology, right? So we call it next generation store technology. We are revamping our entire POS, point of sale systems. While we do that, we are also focused not just on like the associate aspects of it, but also the customer aspects of it. How do I bring in the best flexibility for our associates and customers in the store? And at the same time, how do I provide that efficiency for my customers and my associates in the store? And we are going through a proof of concept and pilot right now for us to be able to revamp our next generation store technology.
That's awesome. I'm very happy that your number one was, sorry if I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but having the customer-centric approach. Mm-hmm. And that's been a lesson that I've learned through talking with every single guest on this podcast so far. Actually, funny enough, they have brought up the fact that if you're driving an initiative that is not customer-focused or customer-centric, then it's going to fizzle out eventually, right? That's what we're here to do. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're leading a large team through a major transformation, as you just double-clicked onto. What do you use as a North Star as you move through your transformation journey?
It's a great question, and how it's not an easy answer. I don't have a true, okay, if I reach here, like if I reach this place, this is where we are. How I look at it and how I talk to my teams is, like I mentioned before, I'm focused on keep the lights on, right? Like foundational, making sure that we are operating efficiently as possible, and at the same time strategic initiatives and making progress. As long as I'm making progress in both of them, if I can see that I'm sensing, because sometimes, most times transformations, you go 2 steps forward, you actually might go 3 steps backward, but then the next step could be like 4 steps forward. As long as we feel like we are making progress, as long as we feel we are making progress on both sides, I would feel that we are making progress. It's not easy because we don't have milestone based and we are not able to see that on both ends. Sometimes in one of the side, I can clearly say that, hey, I'm making progress. I've either added more customers, or I've added more features to my customers, or I've reduced. On the other side, I can always say I've reduced my footprint, or I have actually decommissioned systems. So it's like on both sides, having that balance is how I perceive as making progress.
Is there, just out of curiosity, is there ever a common catchphrase or slogan that you catch yourself saying throughout these initiatives?
I would say building for the future is something that I'm very adamant about, and when I talk to my teams, it's not just about building, it's also about the operating model, right? Like how we as a technology can be an enabler for JCPenney is only when we change our operating model, and I keep talking about a product operating model, which is I need to understand as a technologist, what am I building? What is my customer, and whether it's my customer as the end user or my internal business partners, what am I building? Unless I know what I'm building, unless I understand the consequences of what I'm building, I will not be able to build the right product. So making sure that product operating model focuses on business acumen while it also focuses on technology is very important. So I keep talking to my teams about building for the future, and Tech 2.0 is about building for the future. It means that's what we are focused on.
Building for the future. Let's put that on a t-shirt. Let's talk about some of the investments JCPenney has made. Can you give us some examples of the technology you've invested in?
Quite a few things, right? So let me take the latest and greatest. Like last week, we actually inaugurated our sorter, a new sorter in our Reno fulfillment center, Nevada, which has been in the works for a couple of years now. But
Congratulations.
thank you. It was amazing to go look at. It's not just a change, it's a transformation, because it moved from a lot of manual process to a lot of automation. You still have some manual interventions which you cannot avoid, but at the same time, the efficiency that we can gain, it's a big investment, but the efficiency that we can gain, and it's not just about the efficiency in the fulfillment center, it's about the efficiency and the quality and the speed at which our customers are going to receive their product is outstanding, right? Like making sure that we are investing in the right things, and at the end of the day, again, it's for our customers. Similarly, if I look at the other investments that we have been making, customer-driven operating model is another area where we are heavily focused on bringing value. And when I say value, how we look at it as in-year value. When we invest in something, whether it's a technology, whether it's a process, whether it's a launch, right, like our loyalty relaunch, what we want is, do we have value for our customers in year, and can we bring value? And that's what we are focused on. So those are some of the few investments we've made. And there are others, like I mentioned, store technology. We are investing heavily in ensuring that we are bringing in the right appropriate technology to our stores so that we can cater to our customers in a much better, timely fashion.
That's awesome. You touched on this a little bit, but what are some early results you've seen that show things are going in the right direction for you?
Again, it's the same thing, right? Like, am I seeing value with the things that I'm putting in?
Right.
And it's like progress, right? Like, it's progress over perfection. It's not like I'm going to get 100% of value just because I moved something to like 2 steps ahead. But am I making progress? At the same time, I also look at, like, am I decommissioning systems? Like, one thing that I noticed when I came to JCPenney was we had 4 or 5 systems to do one thing, right? Like, because over years, we have added in so many systems, and we've had this bad habit of we never decommissioned anything. It's because it did like one slight thing better than the other one. We maintained it just because of one functionality. So my focus has been, how do I continue to decommission things that are not needed? And I think it's a total focus on total cost of ownership, right? Like, if I want to own something, and if I want to track that, am I getting the value out of it? Instead of having 4 systems, if I have 1 or 2, it's going to be much more efficient and better. Just because I have 4 systems, it's not going to make it easier, right? Because the data that's needed, the integration that's needed, and the maintenance, ongoing maintenance, is going to be expensive. So we are seeing that we are decommissioning systems. We are seeing that we are moving our business partners into newer. That change management is also getting easy. Like, the training that they are getting and the change management that we are doing is definitely showing that we are actually making progress.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so, how do you anticipate these upgrades will impact overall operations?
It'll make it much more efficient. Speed, right? They will be able to do a lot more with less, which is like cliche, right? But it's also going to help them to make data-driven decisions. If you have heard our CEO, he talks about data-driven decisions, right? Like, technology being an enabler translates into, for me, how can I make decisions based on data instead of like manually somebody going through like tons and tons of Excel spreadsheets to make decisions. So how can technology enable them? And I would say that's what is critical for us to ensure that we see that data-driven decisions are being driven by some of these or all of these investments that we are making.
What impact is AI having in retail?
It's a wide open question, right? Like, every time I have a conversation with another counterpart of mine or any other discussion, we talk about AI,
right.
Because it is bringing in a huge impact to everything that people do, right? Anything from starting with decision-making process, whether it is like modeling that's needed for like forecasting or any of those planning, or you take internally in technology, right? Like, how can I make things faster? Can I have like test case scenarios written by AI so that I don't have to worry about thinking through all the scenarios? Can I have automation in place? So it plays a role everywhere. And I would say most of us, like most of my the CIOs and CTOs I talk to, are experimenting, using them in some place or the other. At the same time, they are also, I'm sure your next question is going to be like, what are you worried about AI? It's not something that we can just say, okay, go implement and then forget about it, right? Because it's still trying to figure out its place. And there are things that we need to be cautious about. So as long as we use it as an augmentation right now, instead of just saying, let's override and let's just automate everything, I think we are okay. I think we need to focus on augmenting and making sure that the model builds, learns, and then figures out a way to automate as much as possible, but at the same time having that human intervention to the extent that it is augmentation is required.
Do you see an AI adoption or massive AI adoption coming into your organization in the next couple of years?
Yes, and I think that's why the systems and the tools, the products that we are bringing in-house, most every one of them is AI ML enabled. So we are not trying to shy away from it because we know it is going to come into play. But we are trying to be very cautious about how do we ensure that it doesn't have hallucinations, it doesn't take over some of the things that we don't want it to take over. But at the same time, it also focuses on efficiency and takes over things that it needs to take over. So yes, it will play a huge role, but how do we control it to the extent that we are not lost in it is how we are looking at it.
Okay, got it. How important is cybersecurity in retail?
It's the number one if you ask me. It's my top of the list. Every day when I wake up, that's the first thing that I look at when I look at my emails to ensure, and then also look at read the news, what's going on out there, because there is no playbook for it, right? I think that's the main difference today in this world is there's no playbook. Anything can happen anywhere. Like how we say nothing is impossible, right? Anything is possible. You're trying to find out, and people are so creative. I wish they would use it for positive intent and positive purposes, but we do have a lot of these different things that coming into play. It's very important. That has to be the top focus for any CIO trying to work through the current scenario.
How has the cybersecurity landscape changed in the last few years?
Overall,
yeah. Overall and in your
JCPenney, I would say overall, I would say moving from a more reactive to a proactive is how I see it. The main change has been, and it's very similar. Even in here at JCPenney, we are trying to be how proactive can we be to ensure that we anticipate the things, and then at the same time, like I said, anything is possible. We learn every day. There's something new that comes up, but how do you ensure that you are being as proactive as possible, and then have the process in place to be able to tackle and handle those things.
It's no surprise to anyone in the industry that tech and IT is a male-dominated field. Can you share more about your early career days?
Interesting question. When I started with, I would say I would back myself 25 years ago with Walmart, my focus was I wanted to build the best technology. So I started as a technologist. I wanted to build the best technology, and I was not interested in management, or I didn't even look at my CIO at that time to say I want to be him, right? Honestly, I didn't even look at my managers at that time to say I want to be one of them, right? If you notice, most of my managers or most of the managers in my division, they're all him. One of my mentors came to me after a couple of years and said, just working with you, what I notice is you get that satisfaction of getting things done through others a lot more than you accomplishing things, right? And it's a distinct quality of a leader, because most often in technology, we are hey, I want to focus on my results, and I want to be in, which I wanted to keep winning, but I was more happier when I was able to enable somebody else get the wins, or enable somebody else finish the tasks that they had. And he was the first one to push me to say, I want you to manage your team, and I want to tell me if you like it. And my first thing to him was no, I'm not interested in your role. I'm not interested in anybody's role. No, I want to keep doing what I'm doing because I wanted to stay technical. And after a lot of conversation, he said, you don't have a choice. You're going to manage your team. Number one, we don't have a leader, so we need you to manage your team. you see it for 2 or 3 months, and if you come back and tell me, David, I don't like this and I want to do something totally different, or I want to stay technology focused, a technical expert, we'll make that happen. But I'll give it to you in writing today that I know that you're going to like it. So that's how I transitioned from like a technologist focused on roll up your sleeves and keep working into like actually managing teams. My only question or my only ask to him was, can I continue to roll up my sleeves when there is a need? Because I wanted to stay technical and I wanted to stay as close to technology as possible. And he was like, be my guest. If you find time, go do it, right? Honestly, after a couple of months, after working with the team, again, another male-dominated team, it was very clear that I liked it because I was actually learning more. Because I was not focused only on my programs or projects. I was working with multiple people and I was learning a lot more, and it helped me connect the dots between the different systems that we had. And he was right. I liked it because it was not just about my success, it was about my team's success, and that's what actually gave me a lot more delight. So I started doing that and I kept moving up. And even then, I would say, like, even after 5 years of that time, I was never looking to be like, okay, now one day I'm going to be the CIO. It always felt, maybe it was a bias, right? Because I'd always seen just men and all of those teams. But again, it was like, I would say it's my sponsors and my mentors who kept pushing me to say, you have to think beyond. And I think that's when I started thinking, it's not about my next level. It has to be about where do I want to go to. And I always looked at 2 levels from mine to say, how do I get there? And it's easy to say, sit here and say that, but at that time, first I have to convince myself that I can actually do the job. And then number 2 is like, how do I find out what's the difference between what I do and what they do? And how do I get there? I would say it's been my mentors and sponsors who have helped me. But that curiosity to ensure that I keep trying to learn more and more has actually helped and paved the way for me. That's what, every time I look at a new role or a new special project, I always look at 2 things, and this has come from my mentors. Number 1, what can I learn from it? That's how I have to look at it. And number 2, how much am I able to contribute to it? Will I be able to contribute? If I can fulfill both of them, that would be the ideal role or an ideal project, and I think that's how I've grown in my career.
That's awesome. So you had, it sounds like, some great mentors, one in specific at Walmart. However, you mentioned the fact that, at your early stage as a technologist at Walmart, you didn't admire to be like your CIO or certain managers. Is there certain attitudes or things they could have done differently for you to adopt the role, a managerial role at an earlier age? Or potentially this is a call to action to managers out there in the industry right now.
Times have changed for sure, right? Like, I would say when I was a developer at Walmart, and when we were like a few thousand developers there, I was probably, we had only a handful of women technologists actually working on, and this is like a year before Y2K, so it was like 98, 99, right? There were hardly any women. So even by virtue of like percentage wise, it was like a mathematical imbalance if you look at, right? But now times have changed, right? Like, I have seen, like, even in my own organization, way to go. Like, we have way to go to get there. But I'm seeing a lot more of women wanting to come in and actually wanting to lead, wanting to shine in technology world and want to do more and bigger things. I think it's both ways. It's not just the managers. I would also say it's us as engineers who come into. We should actually come in with an open mind to say, I want to aspire to be that. I would say it wasn't because of them. It was more because of my own inhibitions that I didn't even think about it. And if I had the same inspiration that I have today when I started, maybe I could have become a CIO a long time ago, right? But it's like 2 ways. What are some of my things, like what advice I would give the current engineers, technologists is, don't limit yourself to what you can do. Always think about what else is out there and what can you do. Similarly, advice to the current leaders, always think about not just people just like you, also people who are not like you, who can actually take up your role. So that inclusive mindset is very important.
You touched on your mentors and sponsors along the way. What advice did they give you? I know you touched on this, I guess, what I'm really trying to get at is, for the folks at home that are watching this who might be in the situation you were long ago, and what thoughts were going through your heads, what were those inhibitors? I want the audience to connect to your thoughts and see I can be like Sharms.
I would say the same thing, right? Like, look for two things. Number one, always look for ways to continue to learn. If you're going to limit yourself not continuing to learn, then I think that becomes not the end, but that becomes kind of like a showstopper for your career progression. Number two, always make sure that if you are invited to a conversation, if you are invited to a meeting, if you have a seat at the table, you have a seat at the table. You weren't invited because there was an empty chair. So you have something to contribute. So ensure that you are contributing when you have a seat at the table. And if in case you don't have a seat at the table and you feel like you should, go knock, ask for it. Don't wait for somebody else to push. And I think those would be the things that I would, and these all sound cliche, but when you're going through, unless and otherwise you do it, nobody else is going to do for you, right? Like, it's like, for me, I would say I was lucky. I had a mentor who pushed me. I can't say everybody is that lucky, right? And so make sure that if you don't have a mentor who's pushing you, you need to push yourself. So don't wait for that opportunity, but just knock yourself.
Thank you. Can you share a challenging moment or project that taught you something that stayed with you? Maybe a project that nearly failed or a launch that didn't go as planned.
Quite a few that comes to, right? Because for me, as far as I'm concerned, failure is not like truly a failure if you didn't learn from it. So the best example I would tell you is, just because something worked for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Like, if it worked for, like, we were at Walmart, we had looked at something and somebody had said, oh, it had worked for Target, it had worked for Amazon, it had worked for like any of the other competition that we had. And when we brought it in-house, obviously we had a Walmartized way of looking at it, and we were like, okay, why didn't it work for us, right? Just because it works for someone else doesn't always mean it will work for you, but you have to look at it as, what is the need that we have that we are trying to solve? Like, even here at JCPenney, and that's what we look at. We are an ecosystem where we home grow some systems and we also bring in third-party tools, right? So I'm a true believer in, we balance both of them, because we don't have the privilege of like building everything, and at the same time we don't need to, because there are so many products out there. So just because it worked for somebody with a homegrown tool doesn't mean that you have to go with a homegrown tool here. You can always look at a product from outside. 80% it works, and then you can add in your own IP to it. So those would be some of the examples. I'm not giving specific names or tools, but those would be the ways that I look at as what has worked or what I believed should have worked. And at the end, we were like, no, but we learned from it, and then we were able to pivot and move away from those situations. Is how I would talk about failures.
I've seen you have a special connection with your offshore team in India. Mm-hmm. Is there a key milestone that they have enabled you to achieve, and your note to your offshore team?
I would say they do have a special place in my heart, because I do have a lot of my development engineering teams in Bangalore, and JCPenney is slightly different than any other retailer that I've worked with, or at least at the time I was with them. We have not just technology, we also have business operation teams there. And so the collaboration that they bring to the table and the kind of work that they do working with the, I can't call it Plano team, but the US team, because I have people all over, with the US team is phenomenal. So many things that we have been able to accomplish in the last couple of years. I can highlight a lot of them. Nothing goes without them getting involved in any of the releases that we make. So love that team, because they are so committed and wanting to do more. Like, every time I go there, I spend a lot of time like walking and talking to them, because I'm like, I do not like PowerPoints and I do not like slideshows, right? So I'm always at the walking around and talking to them, and they're so excited to talk about the things that they've been able to accomplish, and at the same time the things that they want to get involved in. I think that energy and commitment is very contagious. And so I try to go there whenever I can, whether it's my personal trip or my professional trips. They are near and dear to me. This is new news. Nobody else knows this yet because I just booked my tickets. I'm going to be in Bangalore during Thanksgiving this year. So I'm going to be able to spend time with my teams there. I'm excited about it.
Let's go, Maitsys exclusive. What is your approach to involving stakeholders when driving a new initiative and resisting resilience?
My approach is it starts with the problem statement. So JCPenney has been known for business partners making decisions. They've decided the software, they've decided what the solve is going to be, and then they come to, before my time, they come to technology to say, I want you to implement this. We still have a few of those things, but we are trying to figure out a way to get out of it. Our way has to be, our approach has to be, technology plays a key role in enabling those conversations. So they are part of the problem statement and they are part of solving the problem. I don't want technology to say what the solve needs to be. Likewise, I don't want the business to say what the solve needs to be. So making sure that we are all in the same room, discussing what the problem is, and then we come up with a solve to how we solve it, and then figure out what is the best route to solving the problem. Is the right approach. Do we have some misses in this? Yes, even today, right? But I have a great SLT team that have committed to making sure that we are in this together. And I would say help from my CEO and CFO has been phenomenal in this, making sure that technology is involved in. It's not like technology is the decision maker, but technology gets involved in the decision making process and a seat at the table.
Awesome. So you're a world-renowned entrepreneur. What key attributes do you think it takes for young entrepreneurs to get into the seat that you have now?
Be curious, understand. That's very important. If you cannot understand the business, you cannot actually build to solve the problems that the business has. So we used to call it in my earlier life, eat what you cook, right? Like as a developer, I would have to spend time with my business partners for whom I'm developing the systems to say, sit down, spend a day, half a day, and do the actual job and actually use your own systems, and then you'll come back with like, oh my gosh, this takes like forever, 15 clicks instead of, I could have done it in 2 clicks, right? So understanding the business is very important. So be curious to understand what you're trying to solve. I would say it would help you understand end to end. Like if you stay in retail, understand retail. And I stayed in retail all my career is mainly because as a customer, I can actually relate to like what are some of the nuances that we go through, right? And it's near and dear. And for me, my best stress buster has been retail therapy, right? Like when I'm stressed, I just go do some retail therapy. Obviously, my pocket has a hole, but at the same time, it helps me understand, it helps me come back to reality. And so if you want to stay in retail, understand the business, understand retail to the extent that you need to so that you can connect the dots.
That's good. I think my sister has the same stress-busting approach when it comes to retail therapy. Myself, I chose, the gym, things of that nature. But whatever works, right?
Whatever works, yeah.
It's good.
Window shopping is also good.
Window shopping, okay.
Which I don't do much, but...
Retail shopping at JCPenney is the best stress buster.
Oh, yes. Perfect.
What do you think the retail industry will look like from a tech perspective 10 years from now?
It's an interesting question, mainly because I can sit here and say everything is going to be AI ML enabled and AI ML driven, and like there will not be much people involvement, but I think I would be wrong. I think it will be a lot more enabled by AI ML, a lot more technology helping make decisions. It's not going to replace people. It's not going to replace everything. Are there specific areas where you could have a complete model taking over? Maybe, but it's not going to replace everything. I think that human element is very important because at the end of the day, again, it's like the human beings that are going to be shopping, right? Like it's for us. Retail stores are going to exist for us. Retail e-commerce is going to exist for us. And so making sure that we understand that is important. There is going to be a lot of technology that's going to take over speed and efficiency. which is how we need to continue to look at it. And at the same time, we also need to ensure that we are learning and evolving as we continue to invest our technology dollars, because just because it works today doesn't mean it will continue to work 10 years from now. So ensuring that we are evolving as we build and implement our technology is very important.
JCPenney is going through a Phoenix recoil spring transition right now. What do you want the viewers at home to attribute JCPenney with? And is there something synonymous with the mission or value statement?
I would say value, right? That's what we are focused on. Inclusivity, right? Like we are here for everybody, making sure that everybody gets their fair share, and at the same time they get the value for their money, for their time investment, and visit us. We want you in our stores. Come see, we've got a lot of newer, better, really fashion focused products out there. Visit us and you will actually see the difference.
I saw one of the mannequins dressed almost exactly like me when I was walking in here, so definitely they're well dressed. You got a good sense of style at JCPenney.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Today we've covered a lot of good topics. I think it's going to resonate a lot with our audience. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to have you today on my show. Thank you for inviting me out to your headquarters, and thank you again for everything.
Thank you. This was good. This was a really good conversation. Thank you for the questions.
Yeah, of course.